Okay, awesome. I think everybody can see that we are live. Peace, family. Professor Kojo Shishabaz to here this morning. We got our JML 1025 Tribal Jurors course. This is a class that we do basically in the winter and spring for the live sessions. And then obviously the other semesters is self-paced. But this is going to be a really, really good and important class for just fundamentals of becoming a jurist and how you can actually apply that in your own particular lives. Because you'll come across issues, you'll come across things where you do need to get results in your own personal life. And I think this is a good place to actually get started. So um, make sure that everybody's good. I see that we got some students in here. You good? Got it? Cool. Um, Let me show my screen real quick. Let me lower this real quick. Get that down. All right. So let me see this. Share screen. Where is share screen? Share screen. Yeah, we'll just do this for now. Okay, cool. All right. So you should have seen the emails that went out this morning. Apologies on my error with the syllabus, but you should have the syllabus, the proper syllabus with the correct times: 9:30 a.m., 10:30 a.m., and the things that we're going to be covering. So this is the only class that we're going to do where it's live to the public, just to give them an understanding of what we do within our tribal jurisdiction, and just to give them a flavor of like how the course works with me being their professor. And so everything else, students have all the information that they need to know. So it'll be just as it is in the syllabus. The purpose of the syllabus, what is the goal and purpose? If if anything, I want y'all to be the best. I want y'all to be impactful in your communities. I want y'all to do everything you need to do to get remedy for you and your family, right? It's so important. I cannot stress the importance of reading the law, understanding the law, knowing what you need to do, how that works. Like, we'll talk about all that stuff. But more importantly, I want y'all to be able to take people through the process successfully, right? You'll get a certificate. Um, you'll have opportunities for partnerships with Shabazz Associates or just with any tribal jurors, right? That is in good standing. Um, we'll have mock examples. You'll see one that's coming up, and just how you need to be able to handle it as a tribal jurist. And then we'll also have a discount for the software if that's something that is of interest to people. Um, so these are some of the books and materials that you should have already. And then homework and quizzes, what you're going to be doing, right? So all the homeworks, all the links and stuff like that should be in your syllabus. And then these are the enrollment semesters for people who are just watching publicly. All right, jurist. This is somebody who is skilled and versed in law, right? You need to be able to communicate, read, and understand the law. That's jurist, tribal jurist 101, right? Ignorance of the law is no excuse, and so that the same thing applies within our jurisdiction, right? So if you don't understand the Constitution within ARNA and you think you're just going to blatantly bypass it, ignore it, violate it, and then you're going to say you didn't know, well, that's not an excuse, right? So your main job is going to be to bring people through the plebiscite successfully. Now, I know it says, there's other things down there, right? We're not going to talk about that publicly. So here's really the plan that you really need to grasp, right? Create a block vote operation within our political party, right? So that means we need to get people like you, jurors who are capable, able, studied, versed, to be able to fill certain positions within the U.S. jurisdiction. And then we need to get specific recognition that's going to further help what we have going on within ARNA. Obviously, we have institutions that have been built up. You can also participate in those institutions. That's really going to be helpful. Um, and then we need to be setting up systems that are going to help us grow our own food, have our own basically medical stations or medical buildings, our own system, basically a whole autonomous network, right? Where we're able to operate within indigenous culture, not the one that they have been preaching that it's Native Americans, the $5 Indians. These people are not even, anyway, we won't even go there. So the mindset that I need you to really, really grasp is you can't be lazy. Like it's easy, but it's also hard at the same time. In the sense of you do need to read. You do need to make sure you're understanding the process from A to Z. You need to be accountable. Um, if you do mess up, it's okay, right? As long as it's not a fuck up, right? A fuck up we can't help. That means you taking that to the grave, and you're not even accepting accountability. So I know people are like, wait, I thought this is the tribal juris course. Why are we going over this stuff? Because this is the foundation. If I want y'all to be the best, I need y'all to understand the process of developing and crafting that mindset. You need to have good people skills. You need to manage. You need to have good management of your time, and you need to have good people skills. Sometimes it's just being a decent human being to people, because I've heard it all the time, and I don't have to say anything. I just hear stories of people like, oh man, like this person just talked to me crazy, and all I had was just a question. You need strong human will. So that means like if you feel like you're falling behind, right? Manage your time better, push through. If you don't think you understand something, ask questions so that you can get better understanding, right? You do learn from your mistakes. Again, I don't encourage fuck ups, but you do learn from your mistakes. So if you do mess up on somewhere, this is the environment to really help you, right? Always ask your questions. Don't ever fall in silence. And you need to be able to use technology, right? As you see this morning, Professor Kojo had technology issues. He's sending out the wrong syllabus. So you need to be able to critically think about every scenario. You're like, well, I thought we just take it. Just hang tight. We got more classes to go through. Be able to discern from people's stories. This is very important because you're going to be taking people through the process. You're dealing with people. And people may tell you one thing, but the truth is actually something else. So you need to be able to read between the lines. And this is going to really help you even outside of this course. Because you need to be able to discern people. Because people, when you take people through the process, sometimes they're not giving you the full story. An example would be, let's say you take the genealogy course and you get the certification, right? Now you can do genealogy. This is an example scenario where somebody was like, they contacted me. I heard that you were really good at doing genealogy. I said, okay. And I need some assistance finding out my indigenous roots. And I said, okay. And I said, what for? Oh, I just really know that I think I have land and stuff like that. And I said, okay, but really what for? And she said, okay, well, let me tell you the truth. I'm going through a court case right now. I said, there it is. That's what I mean. When you have and we'll talk about some of the stuff too, but like you need to be able to really just listen to people. And I know you're like, man, but can't we automate certain things? You can when you have the experience. And there's going to be even better process there to really make things really simple that are changing within ARNA. Learn to work with your peers. That's part of being a good person, right? I just want y'all to be the best tribal jurists in our jurisdiction, like, period. So here's some of the things that you want to just, and we will revisit these things throughout class and throughout the whole semester. Logic, like legal reasoning and logic. You need to have, like, things are not emotionally driven, even though, it's psychology driven and stuff like that, but people will try to move you emotionally. It's okay. Just stick to the facts. Why are they coming to you? Are they really coming to you because they just want to actually um, protect their assets and stuff like that, and there's nothing that's pressing them? Or are they really have something that's pressing them and they're trying to mask it and use ARNA as a safe haven? That's important, because ARNA is not a get out of jail free card. And that's something that needs to be engraved in your mind. Um, Understanding when the law applies and when it does not apply. So whether you're going through personal situations and you're reading the law, you need to understand when does the law actually apply and when it does not. And also that applies within our jurisdiction. Statutory interpretation. Courts live and die by this interpretation, if you don't know. One word can change the whole thing, how it reads. So you need to read every word. That's important. Procedural mastery. This is where most people lose. Not following procedure. They tell you this is the time you need to have a response by. They'll give it to them 2 days after. Now, don't think that it doesn't happen on the other end where they don't even follow the timeline. But if that happens, you hold them accountable. Hey, procedure, you were supposed to do this at this time, because I bet you if the shoe's on the other foot, they will hold you to the same fire. They're like, listen, you missed it by 2 days. You didn't even ask for an extension. So that's important. So understanding processes and procedures. So whether that be on small claims, you can't bring a federal claim. You can't bring a small claim to federal court if it doesn't exceed 20,000. If it doesn't have any federal laws, you can't bring something that's handled in small claims, such as an example would be car accident, and you're trying to sue the insurance company. Well, in Texas, you can't do that. You have to sue the actual person, and then the insurance steps in. And then that only applies to small claims, unless it's something that the insurance agent violates on a federal level. It's most likely handled in small claims. Point blank period. So knowing the rules is what's going to help you. Jurisdiction. That's just what I explained. Subject matter and personal jurisdiction. Right? Some of y'all, you may come across people, the U.S. jurisdiction don't apply because, I'm a citizen of the, Wyoming state. You'll hear this. You'll hear this from people. You need to educate them saying, okay, well, what landmass are you currently in right now? That's all you got to ask. And if they say, well, Wyoming, where's Wyoming? The United States. Done. They're not and we'll talk about sovereign citizens and stuff like that, because this is what your job is, to make sure that you educate people properly. We're not sovereign citizens. Client management. You need to be able to manage your client flow. Don't forget about people that you started the process with that, maybe didn't finish, but they wanted to, get it done ASAP, but for whatever reason they fell off. Always make sure you have yourself organized. Make sure that you sent the appropriate funds to where it needs to go. This is very important. Relevance and admissible. Like, there's things that are really just considered hearsay. And so you need to know what is considered hearsay and what is actually exceptions to the rule. There's a difference. Legal ethics and professional responsibility. You as a jurist need to be professionally responsible, and you need to have your ethics in check. That also means you need to hold other institutions to that same standard as well, if you're going to be interfacing with them to get specific remedy. That's important. Like that, there's no getting around that. Like some of these entities will try to they'll try to hopscotch and say, oh no, it's not required. Oh, I don't have to do this. I don't have to. They hold to the same standard, even though they try to wiggle around it. Intellectual humility. Like, listen, things are always changing. I'll keep telling you. And that's even happening right now within ARNA. Systems and how you process things as a jurist, even when I started, are not the same. Completely different. And they're evolving. They're going to always be evolving. So that's why you just need to be flexible and open to change. Just know that you need to adjust systems, something that you may be doing for years. That's okay. It may be something that's better, and that's what you got to do. Be open to being wrong. Sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes you are dead wrong, and that's okay. That's going to save you. Like if you are wrong, it's okay. But don't think that you are above being wrong and perfect and that. It's okay. Sometimes you make an error. Um, the psychology of decision making. This one is so important because you're going to figure out how certain people make decisions, and it's always based off of psychology. Sometimes there's money involved. Sometimes there's specific groups of organizations that they have to maintain a specific image. So, I know, like, and I won't even go into details, but like maybe you're dealing with a government institution that deals with loans, the so-called government entity, but they're really not. They're just a private institution. Anyway, you're going to be dealing with stuff like that. You need to know how these courts make decisions. If you go back to the beginning, we talk about when does the law apply and when it does not. That's it. That's all you got to remember. And then just understand that technology, AI, is actually here to assist you, not the other way around. Again, just going back to being a decent human being. All right. Your core responsibility. I know I keep drilling this into your head. I know you're like, but what about the other stuff, Professor Coach? It's a public class. Taking people through the ARNA/IPA process. Whenever you're ready. I know some people there's some people who I remember I went through the same class as them, and it took them years before they started having the courage to take people through the process. And that's okay. But just understand that it's your responsibility to make sure that you follow instructions from A to Z, because here's what happens when you don't. Jurors get, start stealing, committing acts of theft, breach of contract. Some of y'all may have seen this email or this post. This is a real thing. And why I'm so hard on students that are coming through this class is because you too just need to make sure that you take the person through the process properly, you finish it, you've done your job, and you keep an accurate record. I'm spending a lot of time here because I don't want you to go through this class and say, hey, I went through the whole course and I didn't realize how it was that serious to take people through the process properly. That means even when you're dealing with people's relationships, like they're courting, and that you need to make sure that they fill out the rites of passage portal, that it's on record, all that stuff. They're filling out the intake. Okay. They made the payment. You made the payment. I'm just telling y'all. Okay. This is a big deal. So I want you to understand to make sure that you have your house in order. That's important. If you have your house in order, usually the money thing is not really an issue. So it's just a matter of process and procedure. That's really what it boils down to. Which, if you go back to the beginning, right, what we talked about, right? Where was it? Procedure mastery. You just need to understand how to master the process. Period. Okay? All right. Here's an example scenario, and you can type in the chat. A person reaches out to you and says, hey, I was told to contact you because I wanted to know I would like to have multiple husbands, but not for sexual purposes. I'm allowed to be an ARNA, right? Question mark. That doesn't disqualify me, right? Question mark. My jurist didn't mention ARNA to me, just recommended me for the IPA. As a jurist, what would you do? Throw out anything in the chat that comes to your mind that you would do. What would you do? Let me see. What would you do? What would you do? What would you do? Any thoughts? Any thoughts that you would do? Just put it in the chat. How would you handle that scenario? You like, is this a real scenario, Coach? This is a real scenario. Anybody in the chat? I know. that's a good response. I will go back. I will refer back to you. Right. So here's a real scenario. It's when you need to explain that Arna doesn't permit that, right? And you can go to the Constitution, you can revert them to the Constitution and read it, but always say, I told you what it is. I'm not the one taking you through the process, so you need to go back to your jurist. And then after the following, you would inform the other jurist that they mentioned, because you're going to ask, well, who is your jurist? And then they'll tell you, and then you just you reach out to that jurist, say, hey, I got a phone call for whatever reason, I don't know, but you need to explain what's going on with that. I have no involvement with that, but I'm just giving you the proper notice. And that's the best way to handle that properly, because you're not their jurist. You've explained what's the law within ARNA, and then you ask who's the jurist is, and you contacted that jurist and said, hey, you probably need to reach out to this person. Maybe you need to explain this. There's something going on. They think that they can be in ARNA, but it looks like they can't be. And they're talking about you didn't explain that, you didn't even know, they didn't even know ARNA was even offered. So, it's stuff like that. It's just basic communication. You're like, man, people management is what I'm trying to stress to you. All right. The world and the system will try to ridicule you. I know some of you probably have seen this before, but like, people will think that this is a cult. People will think that you're not Native American in the sense of how they define it. They say, go back to Africa, your booty scratching, whatever. I mean, like, they'll say stuff like that, and it's crazy. Like, there's people who are holding on to this narrative because they don't want true Aboriginals, Black Americans, to really be aware of who they are. They say, no, go back to the narrative where you're from Africa. It's literally the narrative. So keep that in mind as you're, taking people through the process. I'll skip that for now. ARNA. Why ARNA has self-autonomy. We didn't give up individual sovereignty for recognition. Like most of these Native American, Asian, European tribes, they gave up their sovereignty for money, for recognition, all the stuff, right? Which is why they're able to do what they do. But they are subject to what? Tribal jurisdiction in the sense of the U.S., right? They're like, yeah, you got to do whatever we tell you to do. If we say give the COVID vaccine to your tribal members, you need to do it. Otherwise, we'll take that funding. So that's something that ARNA hasn't done. We haven't given up our individual sovereignty. So when you're explaining what is ARNA to people, it's a tribal government for the so-called Negro, Black Americans, the true Aboriginals of this landmass of North America. The nation has its people, just sanguineous, right? That's the people, the land, right? And then, or the bloodline, excuse me, and then just solely, which is the land, right? Some people have not even left this, like their lineage has never even left this landmass. But yet the narrative is that, oh no, you were brought here as a slave. Your descendants were brought here by slaves, and therefore from Africa, therefore that's what you are. And that's basically that's how they classify it. The founder is, and the current chief is Amaru Shiali, right? That's very, very important to understand. And this government is only for, again, Aboriginal Americans with that lineage, just solely and just sanguineous, right? You can be married into it. You can, but definitely not for Europeans. It's not for any other. I'll tell you that right now. That's what if they're Mexico or whatever, that's what the IPA is for. If they're from Jamaica, that's what the IPA is for. Puerto Rico, IPA, right? No Asians, no Europeans. So we talked about that. All right, so this document you can find in the protocol manual. This is the formal recognition by the United States from the Department of State. Right, this plebiscite from ARNA was formally recognized by Condoleezza Rice. This is not a made-up document. This is a public document. It's been out there forever, and you can find it in the protocol manual. So you see where the Secretary of the Commonwealth, Pedro. So I just wanted to show that. And then here's the information. It used to be known as ISIS, but formally now it's ARNA/IPA. So that may come up as a question. Who is ISIS? It used to be International Society of Indigenous Sovereigns, right? But now that has been changed to ARNA/IPA, which is Indigenous Political Authority, right? Okay. Non-federally recognized tribes, and what are some of the barriers, right? This is something that you need to understand, but everyone has the right to self-identify by international law. So, and everyone has a right to nationality. So the fact that they either are contradicting or going against that or breaking the law by saying, no, little Negro or niglet, like you are African is crazy. But this is what they do. They said, you're from Africa. Or they tell people, all Black people are from Africa, which is like crazy. So, and no one should be literally deprived of that. But this is what they're doing. They're violating international law. But it's a small group of people that has perpetuate this narrative. That's really the issue. And when you start telling them that's not true, here are the facts, here's the documentation that actually we ruled this world, and here's evidence of it, they start flipping out. Okay. So an example right here, I've shown this before, but like Coretta Scott, Creek Indian. On the mother side. Literally, right? Martin Luther King. They said that no, he's not Native American. He's actually an African American civil rights leader, right? They say, yeah, she has Native American. Coretta Scott King has Native American. This is according to AI, so you got to be careful with the technology, right? Because they too have their own programming. But if you do, obviously this is Coretta's side, so you can see that this is her lineage. And then when you do Martin Luther King's side, Cherokee on his great grandparents' side. So why do they try to put people into this box? It's because they have to control a narrative. When you don't know who you are, they can control you. It's just like religion. That's how they control people. They control people through religion. And then some people have dual lineage. That's also a thing too, right? Just keep that in mind. So you'll deal with people who do have dual lineage. They may have somebody who was from, Jamaica, and then they had somebody that was literally born on North America, and they'll have that's dual lineage, right? So, the Dawes Act of 1887. This is where they basically enslaved a lot. This is a genocidal document, point blank, period. And it's really talking about how we are going to exclude the people who are already here and create this document that this is who the true Indians are, and that's it. Anyway, just keep this in mind. This is really important for doing genealogy. When you're doing background checks on people, I'm bringing this up because like some people, you need to verify. You need to verify where their lineage is coming from. So you need to verify, okay, what's their mother's side, what's their father's side. That's part of some of your duties. So you just need to make sure that everything checks out. So that's why talking to the people when you get taking them through the process is a good thing in the very beginning, because you're going to need to know, okay, I think this is where they need to go, and then you explain to them why. Political genocidal terms such as Black, African American, these are all misnomers, right? And it's even been proven that when you go to like areas of Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, California, they talk about seeing Black Indians. And this is like one of the old documents right here that you can see. Maybe if I can zoom in. Um, right here, let me see if this is big enough. Yeah, I'll show you a better document. Okay, wordplay that people get caught up on. Fiction of laws, something known to be false and assumed to be true. This is happening all the time, and you need to understand that if you're going into these rooms, these systems, these courtrooms, there's going to be a lot of fiction of law in play. They're going to know what is false, but they're going to assume to you that it's true. And if you don't object to it, or if you don't call it out, they're going to be like, hey, it's true, right? You didn't object to it. And they'll make this whole story. Like, we have to talk about this offline, because when you hear some of these stories, you'll understand the importance of why I want y'all to be like very studious. Okay, we already talked about that, so I won't waste too much time on that. Here's something that most people like really don't understand, is that white Americans were really, or quote unquote whites were really, the largest slaves in history. This is never taught in school. This will never be mentioned. This doesn't even get broadcast, right? Literally, the northern part of Africa had enslaved about 1.2 or 1.1 million Europeans. Enslaved. But you're never going to hear that. You're never going to hear that. So all we have to do is just do the same. We just keep pushing out the truth, the facts. We don't have to get emotional about it, and we keep it moving. You can see a lot of the information of what has been told about the slave trade, that millions of people, or 500,000 people, Africans, were brought over. Quite the opposite. 4,000 people to 6,000 people, roughly, based off of the database. And so, all right. Here's the thing of how we got here. We had colonizers of all shapes, sizes, colors distort the facts of history. They got people who are portrayed to being white are really not white, but they distorted the history by removing certain things, putting things and making it look very true, and pushing this narrative, pushing these stories, saying, yeah, this person was always here. Like, no, these group of people really came from that continent, and we have all the documentation. Not only that, they took away a group of people's nationality by stripping away their identity. They don't know who they are, right? And that's where you come in. That's where you help people realize, okay, yeah, this is the true history. This is what you actually need to do, and this is how you can actually reclaim and protect your property. It's just like people paying taxes willingly. You know how many people in the 1% that are not even paying taxes? And it's been proven. But the same thing goes, is that is also offered to you if you're aware. Colonizers, culture appropriated from true Aboriginals globally. Like I keep telling you, some people that they portrayed to be European, white-ish, pale, not even that. So here's some treaties of examples that they violate, and they just continue to violate all the time. Like the Treaty of Delaware, the Treaty of Fort Pitt. None of these things were honored. They were violated, right? Here's an example of rewriting history. Lewis Howard. He was the creator of the light bulb, not Thomas Edison. But let history tell you, they said Thomas Edison is the one that did it. Okay. All right. Here's some legal definitions that I'm trying to tell you. Black, not of Hispanic origin. A person having origins any of the black racial groups of Africa. What? And this is still the same thing that they use, that they force us to check. Allegedly force you to check. Hispanic, a person of Mexico, Puerto Rico, Cuban, Central, South America, Spanish culture, regardless of race. What? It's crazy. American Indian, a person having origins of any of the original peoples of North America. That's the one that you really should check. All right. This one is a really funny one to me. This is why I keep showing it. This is literally a paper from a faculty member talking about blackness as a disability. I want y'all to read this. Just check it out. It's free to download. But it literally is describing how being black, this, that, and third in the court system is a disability, because these people will continue to do all sorts of things to remove your rights, strip you of your rights. But yeah, I mean, that's what they're going to do because you don't know who you are. So download this. It's good to have, good future reference. Maybe you need to use it as a fact of law, whatever journeys you may be on. But it's good. It's a good read. The 14th Amendment. And we're going to talk about some of these pivotal things that really have impacted things. But the main thing that I want you to really pay attention to, where is it at? No. Yeah, here it is. The validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment, pensions, bounties for services, and suppression, insurrection of rebellion, shall not be questioned. That means you are a slave as a 14th Amendment, and you can't do nothing about it, and you can't question the public debt of what we got going on. No matter what. So would you want to be a 14th Amendment? Probably not. Because really, they're treating you as an artificial person. So here's how they do it, right? They negotiate your rights through ignorance, right? They even do it from infants. That's why they issue out, these birth certificates or force people to take birth certificates. You're not required to if you are part of a tribal jurisdiction that has the documentation, that has all these things established. It's not even required. You can do a record of no birth, call it a day, still get your Social Security, still get a passport for the child, good to go, right? But they do this all the time. But most of the time they do it through the rest. So here are the Eurasians that we keep talking about that are claiming that they're from North America. When you literally go back and do their genealogy, they're from Euro-Asian places, but they won't admit to it. They're like, nah, we the true ones. These are the people that are clawing on to the identity of being a Native American. They're like, nah, we the ones that was here. Okay. All right. Here's some legislation and cases that I want you to pay attention to. We're going to talk about the Dred Scott case. This is a case that even lawyers that are even politicians currently. I had a politician. I'll tell you a short story. I had a politician literally come to my folks' house, and he was like, "Hey man, I want y'all to vote for me. This, that, and the third. Because I'll be sure to take care of the community." He was Hispanic. I'll be sure to take care of the community and da 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 da. And I was like, "Oh man, that's cool, man. Like you, what party you with?" He was like, "Yeah, I'm the Democrat, and I'm the House of Representatives." Blah blah blah. I said, "Oh man, that's cool. That's cool." I said, "I have one question for you." I said, "You say you want to take care of the community, right? But how are you going to address one major thing that is pivotal, which is the Dred Scott case for quote unquote blacks, African Americans, so-called Negro?" He was like, "What you mean?" He's like, he was just waiting to hear what I had to say. I said, "Listen, the court ruled that Americans of African American or African descent, whether free or slaves, are not citizens." And I said, "If that is the case," he said, "Listen, I already know where you're going." He said, "This is one of the dark things that I learned when I became a lawyer." And I said, so how are you going to address that? I said, what can you offer that's part of your plan that's actually going to remedy that we're actually going to have rights? We're going to be able to do things in peace without having to worry about, being murdered in the street, this, that, and that. I just wanted to see just his response. He said, I don't have an answer. I said, then why are you here? I said, I think we're done then. He said, wait, before you go, just take my number. Maybe you may change your mind. I still would like y'all's support, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, that's cool. It's fine. But like, if you don't really have a solution, right? Then what narrative are you really selling? Exactly. Another one, we talked about the 14th Amendment, right? This is the citizenship that they supposed to be giving you citizenship with the 14th Amendment. But really, they put the whole, I guess, systematic, a blanket approach on everybody, not just on blacks, even though they already did it already with the Dred Scott case, the 13th Amendment, right? That's supposed to abolish slavery, but really it was just a new form of slavery, right? So these are just some cases, some legislation that I want you to pay attention to, just to be aware of. But really, the Dred Scott case, the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, right? So like I was highlighting with the Dred Scott case, the issue term Negro, the issue is African, right? These are all, and then imported into a country as be like they're considering blacks, African Americans as property. So therefore, they're saying it doesn't violate nothing. Like, because the Fifth Amendment considers them as, or the Dred Scott case consider them as property. So therefore, they have a Fifth Amendment right that say, hey man, they're basically property. We can do whatever we want to our property. So we're not in violation of nothing. Like what? That's really the issue, right? And this case is still in standing. So when I tell you the lawyer said he had no reply, not even, yeah, he was a lawyer / House of Representative. We're rerunning again. He has no reply. There's nothing that he can respond to that. So this is what you have to understand. This is what you got to understand. I know this is some of the more boring stuff, but this is the foundation and stuff before we move on to the other areas. So the point is that this is still happening to this day. Genocidal acts are still taking place amongst our people. And they do it without, like, they do it through the housing market. I don't know if you saw what let me go back to where is it? I don't know if it's here or not. But I think it's like the Civil Rights Act of like 18, what was it? I'm trying to remember which one is it. It's dealing with the housing. Oh, the Civil Rights Restitution Act. That's the one I was thinking for. This is where they have to comply with civil laws and stuff like that. And, what was it? Well, maybe not that one. But there was one where it's like specifically for housing that, let me see if I can find it. I'll tell y'all. Yeah, Civil Rights Act of 1968, sorry. Ooh, there's so many of these Civil Rights Acts. That's supposed to be allegedly. This is supposed to be defined like housing discrimination. Do you know these people are always constantly discriminating? They've done redlining specifically to, blacks, African Americans. They've done the redlining. Then on top of that, they'll discriminate from you getting a loan to get a house. They're like, nah, man, you really don't make enough. And they were like, nah, we just really don't want blacks in this neighborhood. This is all they're doing. And then on top of that, sometimes they're like, well, we would love to give you a mortgage, but unfortunately, you're just not qualified. And you're like, wait, I have a 750 score. I have good credit history. I make enough money. What is the issue? Why you won't give me a mortgage? And it's a good area too. And they're like, unfortunately, the AI just said that you're not qualified. So all these things, they take in people's housing. Like, this is stuff that they do. Like, these small groups of people are conjuring up to remove property from black people in general, because they're like, these people, they consider property themselves, so they, they ain't got rights. They don't even know what their rights are. So what we gonna do? We're gonna strip their property. We're gonna tax them too hard. So when you come to the tribal jurisdiction, when you explain this to people, it's a different jurisdiction, different rules apply. And they would do this. They would literally, and they're violating the law still to this day with the housing and mortgage industry, right? These people are issuing out. Never mind. We'll probably say that for another day. Here's just something to just note of that just keeps getting documented. The Lewis and Clark documented everything in sight, whether plants, rocks, minerals found, the people by tribe, by habits, colors, warlike. Look at what they said. Red man or the white man, the black, bushy-headed Washatas. Not red man, not the white man, but the black, bushy-headed Washatas. So it can't be, where is my image? It can't be these people. I just look at their head, it don't look bushy. You know what bushy look like, right? Like we don't. Maybe for the public, I'll just do this one for one time. One time for the one time. Let me see if I can pull it. This is what pulled up with black bushy, right? I'm gonna just pull it up. Maybe you can see the screen. I don't know if you can, but let me see if I can change my screen. Let me see. I'll stop sharing that, and then I'll share this just as an example. I have to do this because these people keep playing these games. Black bushy hair. This is the first thing that popped up. Besides the cat, this is the first thing that popped up. So we can't be playing these reindeer games. So let me go back to the class to get y'all out of here on Saturday. Okay, let me zoom out. All right. Yamasee Indians were Negro. Most popular thing is the fact that the African American by Christopher Columbus, Yamasee Indians were Negro. So what are we talking about? Just more documentation that the Aboriginal people of North America were black. All right, so here's something that you need to understand that's happening. You probably will see this not probably, but you will see this on Sunday. You should have received a link, or you will be receiving a link as far as, the chief addressing the nation on Sunday. And really, this is part of the process that we're going to be going through, that's happening right now, is that an entity underneath ARNA is going through a process of recognition. So that's being done currently. So you can see the documentation that's already been initiated and started. Here's the big thing I want you to keep in mind. People who remain as the status of 14th Amendment, whether it be Negro, African American, whatever, sometimes I don't even know what people, sometimes they call themselves white, will be wiped out. They're already being wiped out. A good portion of it got started in 2020, right? And you already know what it is. It starts with the C. Technology is here. It's also wiping people out. So if you don't know, that started literally last year. AI, right? Automation's been, happening at rapid rate as well. So you could go into store and they'd be like, go self checkout, and there'd be one person there in case if something happens. Otherwise, you go into self checkout. They got Flippy the robot, so they cook. A robot is cooking your food. You need to really be people who are choosing to be independent, meaning you're not working with groups of families. You choose to be kind of by yourself, isolated. You're gonna be in trouble. Um, they're gonna be the first one. You're gonna be the first one targeted. People in Arno who continue to start families and gain skills and work on code will win. 100%. That's not that's not changing. Starting cities, actually owning cities as families, major. Real estate, land, main key. Literally, if you don't own it, you don't control it. And if you put it in tribal jurisdiction, that even further creates a separation. Because now you're talking about literally a reservation. And we'll talk about that definition and how that actually applies in a later class. But literally, when you have a tribal entity that owns a property that's tax exempt, oh shit. Anyway, I don't know why people text me right now. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. So at Bridge University, you did the right thing. You sign up for the course, right? You sign up for different courses, and then you need to start building up your local jurisdictions. So that means families need to get together, help each other, solve their problems, whatever they got going on, and then building up their economics, and then having systems in place. And this is what's going to be the key: building your tribe, right? And starting healthy families, right? Those who stay focused will get the restitution, period. And if you're building systems, you're golden. So the subject matter jurisdiction, this is the keys of jurisdiction. I keep telling you about that. You're going to always constantly be dealing with. You're going to either be dealing with subject matter jurisdiction, who has the authority to issue out, the situation on the matter. So it's like an example would be, try to give it an easy one. Let's say you're working a 9 to 5 and you get fired wrongfully. They wrongfully terminate you. Well, what would most people do? Most people would be like, hey, that's cool. I'm going to find another job. Some people will be like, hey, I'm going to file a complaint. They're going to file a complaint and they're going to federal court. Now, what federal court, they do have, subject matter jurisdiction, but what they're going to tell you is, did you file a complaint with the EEOC? Because we can't take it. We don't have subject matter jurisdiction, meaning you did not exhaust full remedy. So you have to go through EEOC first. They have subject matter jurisdiction. Then once they've done their investigation and maybe they say, well, you know what, you can sue, or we can sue on your behalf. Then they'll issue a right to sue letter or they'll take on the case. So again, going into processes and procedure, you need to be aware of that. And sometimes people sign arbitration agreements as an employee and they don't realize that. And that's what's going to also bind them to that. And we'll talk about contracts too, because that's important. Right. And then I think another one is personal, right? Personal jurisdiction. That's basically authority over a person, right? Regardless of their location. So regardless as a jurist, ARNA has personal jurisdiction over you, right? That means you can't just go out here and do whatever you want to do. You're held to a contract. So ARNA has personal jurisdiction and subject matter jurisdiction over you first. Keep that in mind. So I have to explain that. Don't be going off wandering. Here's the thing that I think a lot of people need to be aware of. Throughout human history, slavery has been implemented against many nations in different forms. So you're seeing that being happening right now with all these different systems of automation, AI, work, job, music industry. It don't matter where it is. Slavery of some sort has been implemented, right? And the fact that whites were brought here as slaves by Moors is really the the flabbergasting issue. Like, it's like, whoa, they were. But that's not the narrative that they've been telling you. They say, nah, you were brought here as slaves. Quite frankly, it's the opposite. Slavery in reverse. All right. Here's an example scenario. We won't spend too much time on this, but I have to just kind of walk you through it just because this is a real thing that may happen. You're like, is this a real scenario, Coach? This is a definite real scenario. A national calls you telling you they were raped, tortured, and declares for national emergency. National is requesting all branches of government to get involved and go where they are at. I will tell you how to handle this situation. Listen, this is a crazy scenario from the jump, right? So you would need to contact NJS. You need to contact just the head key people, right? And let them know, hey, I don't know why this person is saying all this stuff, but something is happening that you may need to investigate, right? You can sit, you like, hey, I don't have to be involved, but if you need me to be involved as a witness to what they told me, I'm just letting you know. And then they'll find out whether it's an emergency or it's just a cry for help or they're crashing out. And in this scenario, what I'm describing to you, this person was literally crashing out. None of the stories that they were telling were real. They got all branches of government involved. It was wild. It was crazy. You may come across people like that. You just need to be aware how to handle it. That's all I'm saying. So we can skip that. All right. Oops. So you have your homework, right? Just need to read the manual, the legal maestro, section 1-6 of the book. Also, I need you to read pages of the honor protocol manual 1 through 20. Right? There's no actual. I think the homework link should be in the syllabus, if I'm not mistaken. If not, then it's the next class period. So yeah, it'll be next class period where there's actual homework. So that's kind of your homework for now. I think this will be a good start. And let me make sure I cover this. So here's like a summary for people who are considering being a jurist, want to investigate how to be a jurist within our tribal jurisdiction. You need to be able to think clearly. You need to be able to read precisely. Like, you're going to be reading the Constitution, and you need to really understand what it is that you're reading. You're going to be reading the protocol manual, which is about to be updated. You need to understand how to read it and be able to communicate that precisely. When you're dealing with people and you're dealing with scenarios, you need to be able to think clearly. Like, okay, I see the facts. What is the best move for judgment? You need to act ethically. That means you need to make sure that you're on code, you're following your contract, you're following everything that you're supposed to be doing as a tribal jurist. You're going to the think tanks. That's your continuing education. That's how you stay up to speed. Don't finish the semester and then not attend think tanks. That's how you stay current, if that makes sense. If you don't attend the think tanks, you basically are not going to be an active jurist. And if you're practicing being a tribal jurist, you're going to get in trouble, right? Understand the procedure and process. Once you see what the new process looks like and how to take people through the process, that's important, right? And remain as far as like independent, as far as like being able to, okay, let me read this, let me understand this, let me like be able to be an independent thinker. Like, be able to try stuff that makes sense to try. And if you got the feedback, you're like, okay, cool, that did not work. But you don't want to be so like, you're like, man, I'm dependent on what the next step is. It's like, if we show you how to operate as a jurist, how to be successful as a jurist, you know what you need to do. Take some action. And then just make sure you respect all the whole legal system. People coming in here and they're trying to like, I don't respect the law. I don't this, that, and the third. I'm like, okay, man, listen, you'll find yourself in trouble. Yeah. And on that note, I'm going to open up the floor for questions to the public. And then if nothing from the questions, then I'm going to wrap it up publicly. And then I'm going to see the students on that level. So I don't think I see any questions publicly. So I'm going to end this live. And for those who want to sign up for the semester, the live semester with me as their professor, they can go to shabazassociates.com and then go into the tribal jurors tab. Thank you for y'all's time, and I'm going to end the live.